What is going on, everyone? It's Griffin here, and I hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. Now, over the past couple of years, I've made it one of my top priorities to pretty much work as much as I possibly could in order to build up my asset column while also creating a business that was able to sustain my living costs and then hopefully throw off enough cash each month to reinvest back into my investments. And I say a business because I have tried and failed at so many different businesses previously before finally figuring out something that worked for me, which is now this YouTube business. And this is just the best type of business for me personally. I get to share my passions and knowledge with the world, hopefully provide value to anyone who's watching, and then also make some money on the sides. But after a couple of years being a creator in this particular niche, I know for a fact that a lot of individuals watch financial YouTube channels in order to try and get information on what could possibly be the best course of action for their investments, ultimately just trying to navigate the complex world of money, business, and investments. Trust me, if you're just starting out, I've been in your shoes, I know exactly how it feels, and even to get to the point where I'm at right now, it has been a trip and a half, always trying to figure out how the best course of action for myself is going to be moving forward, and I'm continuously learning each and every day. And since this video isn't only about investing, I thought it would be really cool and helpful to make a video sort of outlining what I did do to get to this point, yes, but then also what I would do if I was starting over from scratch, knowing now what I know. And although it might be really tempting or maybe even logical to think that jumping into real estate investing, stock investing, crypto, forex, whatever it might be the best thing to do right when you're starting out, I would actually say that these are not the things that you should be concentrating on when you are first starting out. So let's get into some of these steps that I've personally implemented. By the way, none of them are really in order. They're just things that did help me get to where I'm at right now. And hopefully this can help some younger individuals or just people who are starting out in the world of business and investing. Alright, so first and foremost, you need to figure out some way of paying for your basic living expenses each and every month while you then focus on your side hustle or side business, which will be your main focus for the next 2 to 3 years or maybe even longer. For most people, this is probably going to look like a job because this is pretty much the most surefire and consistent way to generate income on a consistent and steady basis, which will allow you to hopefully start saving at least a small amount each month and getting into that mindset while you then also have time on the sidelines to build out your side business. Of course, not everyone is going to be cut out to be a business owner or even be self-employed for that matter. This is just something that I personally strive for in order to achieve my goals quicker and do something that I actually enjoyed. However, you can still be very successful maintaining a more traditional and steady job. You just have to be really consistent and disciplined in paying yourself first throughout the course of your career and reinvesting that excess cash flow each month back into your asset column. This is critical. Now, as a side note, if you're still in your teens watching this or your early to mid 20s and you have the luxury of still staying at your parents' house, thus slashing down your monthly basic living costs to probably pretty much zero if they're paying for rent, well, their house, food, etc., well, you should still absolutely take advantage of this and be as aggressive and on the offense as possible with your overall strategy. This wouldn't be a time to take it easy. On the contrary, this should be a time where you're saving up as much as possible and further educating yourself for when you do end up leaving and make the best move possible. I can guarantee you that if you're still broke living at your parents' house, then you definitely have an issue with your income to expenses. You should reassess what that is, try to audit your own finances, whether or not it's an income or an expense problem, because once you do move out, this is only going to get amplified. And by the way, once you do end up leaving your parents' house, or let's say you're in your early 20s right now and you're first moving out, don't make the mistake of getting a super expensive and full luxurious apartment just for the sake of it, because on paper, you can afford it with your new $50,000 a year job. Trust me, you should just get something that suits your basic needs while you're getting on your feet and on the right track in your early career. You should rather be focusing on taking that excess money that would otherwise be going into this rent and putting it back into your own knowledge, your investments, and ultimately focusing on building up your savings towards that first rental property, which we'll be speaking about later on in the video. One thing I've actually noticed in myself, along with some peers that I've spoken about this concept with, is that when you increase your expenses on a monthly basis, at least your fixed costs, it sort of pushes you into this box where, first of all, you do have less options financially, but then also you might get somewhat less creative in terms of ways to push forward because you're focused on paying for those much higher expenses. So yeah, do yourself a favor and try to keep your expenses as low as possible when you are younger. Anyway, circling back to how you're going to pay for your basic living needs when you're first starting out, for most of us, this is going to look like a job, even if temporarily you don't necessarily love the job and see yourself doing that indefinitely for the rest of your career. That consistent and monthly income should be an asset that you're leveraging towards taking that money, putting it into your own asset column, and then also paying for your basic living expenses and allowing you to have time after work to build out your side business, which is exactly what I personally did. Remember, this video is pretty much sharing my own experience doing so, and it's also what a lot of other people have done that I've consulted with who are also self-employed individuals who actually happen to be real human beings and not Shopify dropshippers who are flying in private jets. Now, because I know some of you are probably thinking to yourselves right now that you already have a job or that this isn't necessarily the life hack that you're expecting from this video, well, let's look at a scenario where you were able to pay for all your living expenses without a job somehow. Your only other option is a business, a side hustle, whatever you might want to call it. This is pretty much the alternative to how you can create money when you are starting out, either a job or a business. It's pretty black and white, really. Now, if you're a child prodigy and you're really good with computers and coding, then yeah, maybe you can get some funding and bootstrap your way to a multi-million-dollar buyout for your new app. But for most of us, entrepreneurship looks a lot more like years of trying different businesses, failing, and then readapting, pivoting to finally find something that suits your own skill set. It personally took me about 3 to 4 years to get this YouTube business really off the ground, and throughout that period, I was also dabbling in other business ventures that never really ended up working out. But I was working 60 to 80 hour weeks. Yes, that was also including my full-time job. But after work, another 30 to 40 hours was going into creating my business systems, or at least attempting to do so. And I can comfortably say that in the first 3 years, there was absolutely no way I would be able to comfortably transition away from that job because I was still building up my momentum and my foundation to this business. I would have no doubt been living in my car, and by the way, that was a 2008 Hyundai Accent which leaked gas fumes into the cabin in the winter. It was pretty bad, but you do what you have to do when you're starting out. Now, one of the main downsides that I do see with starting a business right out of university, say, or if you don't have a job, is that you're going to have a very hard time getting borrowed funds. And what I mean by this is that even if you're, say, killing it with your business right out of university, or if you didn't go to school at all for that matter, which is totally fine, and even if you're making, say, $100K a year, creditors like to see consistency in income. So from my own experience and speaking with other self-employed business owners who have never had consistent income from a job, it's extremely difficult to first get that loan when you're starting out, and creditors like to see at least 2 years of business income that has been declared, and good business income at that, before you're able to get approved for a loan at a good rate, or even at all for that matter. But hey, that only really does matter if you do plan on investing in real estate or even buying a house for yourself. If you plan on renting your whole life and for you, business is the way to go, you don't want to have a job and you're able to actually apply your own skill set to a job that makes sense for you and you're killing it, providing value to the market, then all power to you. And that is definitely a different lifestyle that you can choose to go forward with. I know a bunch of people who, for example, started construction businesses and they're doing an absolute phenomenal job, racking in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's very malleable because the thing is, the job market and business market is pretty much unlimited. There is a million different ways that you can create income. I'm just sharing this from my own experience and what I wanted to accomplish. But with that said, if I were to restart at zero, what type of business would I focus on? So I know this is very broad, but I would focus on a business that you can start with very little capital, or at least a small amount of capital that you're able to save in a couple of weeks or even a couple of months tops. And then also a business that you're able to scale quite rapidly and easily with little to no variable costs moving forward. Of course, it's pretty much impossible though to once again provide blanket statements here because there are a billion different businesses that you can start. However, from my own experiences, I have tried product businesses, service businesses, a combination of both in one business, and then also a content-based business, which is what I'm doing right now, outside of real estate, that is, which is completely separate in itself. And I look at that more as an investment, even though it is very much a business. But all of those businesses outside of the content business I do now on YouTube were a lot more difficult to scale and took a lot more time and resources as the company actually grew. Again, though, you just really need to identify a business that complements your own skill set and works for your lifestyle. I have friends that, for example, run painting businesses. They are making an absolute killing, 15 people working under them. That works for them, wouldn't necessarily work for me and my own skill set. So that right there, though, is the reason why you need to try out multiple different ventures when you are first starting out, and then going all in on the one that actually sticks and stay consistent with it for at least a year. Because if you're jumping from one thing to the next every month to 2 months, you're never going to be able to create enough momentum in that business to actually make an impact. Okay, so I know I'm going on quite a few tangents here, but I also want to make it extremely clear that the concept of passive income does not exist when you are starting out. And let me clarify that, okay? When you are starting out, it will be active income to the fullest, whatever you might be doing, whether that's a job, it's going to be super active, or whether or not you're building a business, it's going to be even more active, okay? Trying to create passive income right out of the gate with no capital is pretty much impossible. Like, don't even think of it and pretty much get that out of your vocabulary. The only forms of passive income that really exist are either cash flow from real estate, dividend income, royalties, passive income from business as well, but that is not something that you can strive for when you're first starting out with little to no experience or capital. Passive income will only be earned when you've done enough active activities, essentially, to make enough income to pour back into your asset column, which over time will start creating passive income for you. But also keep in mind that passive income is never 100% passive. You always still need to water the seedlings and water your money tree. All right, now the next thing that I could not recommend more is start focusing on building and improving your credit score and your credit report as soon as possible. Now, the first form of credit that is typically available to us is in the form of a credit card. So I would recommend getting a credit card as soon as possible when you turn 18 years old. Of course, be extremely cautious and understand how a credit card works. But if you just pay off your balance each and every week, well, I typically just pay off my balance about once a week. And this is something that I've been doing since I'm 18 years old. And now, what am I? I'm 24 years old. So over this period of time, I have now built up a credit profile that is worthy of lending from big creditors. In North America, credit is everything when it comes to trying to get a loan at a good rate, or even at all for that matter. So if you start building your credit profile as of 18 years old, well, when comes time to buy your first property or want to get a loan for pretty much anything else, if it's a business loan or whatnot, this is going to be a huge and massive tool in your tool chest that's going to work to your advantage. Trust me when I say this, if you arrive to a bank or a creditor of any sorts for that matter, even if it's a private lender, and you have no credit profile, no credit history, no income consistency, job experience, or even collateral to back your loan against, you're quickly going to realize that you have put a stick in the front wheel of your bicycle. In this case, the bicycle is your life, and you're probably not going to get the news that you're hoping for. So yeah, there isn't much to talk about there. Make sure to get a credit card as soon as possible, pay it off consistently, and start building your credit score. All right, so let's now speak a bit more about investing, because after all, most of my channel does focus on investing of all kinds, and you're probably wondering when investing would come up in today's video. The first thing I would say is if you're just starting out and you only have, say, a couple $100s to start investing with, you could definitely start investing in the stock market using an app like Wealthsimple Trade or any other of these stock brokerage apps, but I would probably recommend not actually investing in the market just yet. The reality is that let's say you only have $200 to start investing with in the first place, and by chance you do hit it large with a certain position and you're able to make a 100% return in a month's time, which in recent market environments is definitely not out of the question. Well, that is fantastic, but even still, 100% return on $200, you're looking at $200, and you're now going to have an account balance, if you sold, by the way, of $400. And that is good, but ultimately in the bigger picture, that's not really going to move the needle. What will, however, move the needle more consistently is reoccurring contributions to your investment portfolio over years and even decades down the road. This is what's going to have the largest impact on the exponential growth of your net worth over time. But to make reoccurring contributions, you need cash flow on a monthly basis. And that cash flow will be created through, well, either your job, like we spoke about earlier, or your business, hopefully, if you did choose to go down that road. So I know we've spoken about this previously on the channel, and other people have also spoken about this concept, but if you only have a couple $100s to start investing with, and you don't necessarily have a strong financial literacy foundation, then I would highly recommend that you take that money and just reinvest it back into yourself, into your own knowledge, your own education outside of formal education. The first thing I would do is just buying a stack of books. And although there are so many great books to read, the first stack that I would recommend is this stack right here, consisting of, first and foremost, Think and Grow Rich, along with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, also a great book that you need to read when you're first starting out. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, one of my favorites for mindset and continued perseverance in your goals. The Psychology of Money, also a really good book that I think everyone should read, especially if you're just starting out. Millionaire Fastlane, I know it's a really cheesy title, but it's a great book and gives you concrete steps and courses of action to take, especially when you're starting out. That was one of my favorite books that really helped me a couple of years back. And then if you're interested in real estate, I've spoken about it so many times, but Real Estate Retirement Plan is also a really good book. I can comfortably say this stack of books right here probably cost like $100 probably, and I have made tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars actually from the concepts that I learned in these books that I didn't even know before reading those books, because you don't know what you don't know. So those books I definitely recommend, but it's also education of all kinds outside of formal education, because typically formal education, what I mean by that is high school, university, college, whatever, they're not necessarily going to teach you concrete steps about the real world and financial literacy. At least that was my experience in university, and I went to business school. So continued education is going to be one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal that you can then reutilize and deploy into your own business and the way that you're approaching money. And yeah, with only a couple $100s to start investing with, you're going to have a much higher return on capital invested with further education, whether or not that is books or courses, whatever it might be, than probably $100 or $200 in the stock market. Also, this goes without saying, but we're human, so emotion typically does take over in a lot of situations, but don't compare yourself to post on Facebook or on other mediums where someone is flashing a 3,000% return on some altcoin. This is really an anomaly, and for the one person showing this, there are thousands of investors who FOMO'd into that same position, lost their shirt on it, and didn't end up sharing those screenshots of their account. Trust me on that. Proper financial literacy, though, will allow you to make more rational decisions with your finances and your investments. And then later on down the road, once you do have a solid foundation and more capital to work with, well, then taking on maybe a slightly higher risk position like a Dogecoin. Can't believe I just said that, but a position like this won't necessarily be as large of an impact on the overall swings of your portfolio. Basically, what I'm saying is focus first on creating your foundation of knowledge and then also a foundation to a strong portfolio before venturing on into YOLO plays. And actually, as a matter of fact, I kind of just thought of this on the spot here, but if I was starting over from zero, I would probably unfollow about 95% of people on social media, because comparison is the absolute enemy to growth and success. I'm telling you, like, I've compared myself to so many people over the years, and every time you fall into a rut like that where you're comparing yourself to others, it's just toxic. It doesn't help anyone, doesn't help you improve your own business. I would sooner just put my head down and focus on building my own business and really just expanding my knowledge about investing and just topics that interest me in general. You can make a business about absolutely anything in this day and age. So if gardening interests you, then go all in on gardening, learn everything there is to know about gardening, and then create a content business around gardening. There is a market for that also. To be honest though, of everything else that I would recommend here, if I was starting over, the number one thing I would focus on is, well, after the knowledge part, because that's the most important, but after that, the number one thing I would focus on is saving up enough money to buy my first duplex at 5% down and live in that duplex to house hack. This is really important for a bunch of reasons that we're going to speak about right now. In my honest opinion, this is hands down the best way that the average person can start building their wealth and getting ahead financially. And with house hacking in a duplex at only 5% down, you're getting the best of both worlds. First of all, you're offsetting your cost of living by having someone else pay for a portion of the mortgage and all that and the expenses on the property. So you're lowering your living expenses. That's number one. And number two is opportunity cost in terms of the money that you would otherwise be throwing away at rent that is just gone forever. You're now building equity in a property. And actually, there's a third thing right out the gate that I can see here is that with investing in property, you're now a property owner. So as you're building up equity over time, you then have a lot more leverage and options available to you to re-tap into equity and do different things later on down the road with that equity. Remember that throughout your journey here, every single time a dollar flows into your asset column, it should never come out. Up until now, I have never taken out a single dollar of principal out of my asset column. And this should be something that you also live by, because your asset column is what's allowing your money to work for you around the clock while you are actively out working and generating income. The goal is not to work your entire life to make active income and then spend it on your expenses. The goal is to create active income, transform it into passive income through your investments, and then from there being able to live off of your investments. That should be the goal. In terms of the 5% down on your first duplex and house hacking though, honestly, just do it. I'm telling you, this is a really good strategy that you can implement to start getting into real estate and benefiting from the benefits of real estate with pretty much almost no money down. If you buy a $400,000 duplex, for example, and house hack in it, 5% down to $400K, you're looking at $20K down. Yes, you're gonna have some closing costs, but all in, you should be at around $25,000. That is an amount that pretty much anyone can save up to, even if it takes, say, a year or two to achieve. And if you are living, let's say, in Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, move out of the city. Honestly, move out of the city. We live in an age now where you can do your work typically remotely, or if you have a business that isn't a hands-on business, it's an internet business, you can do this from anywhere. I would say if you are actually serious about moving forward and getting ahead financially, this is something that you should do. Just a couple of years with that same duplex example we just spoke about, you would be building tens of thousands of dollars worth of equity in that property, and that doesn't take into account actual appreciation or forced appreciation. Just with that, say, $20K down on the $400K duplex, not even taking into account the fact or the opportunity cost that the other tenants are offsetting your cost of living, well, in year one, depending on your rate, you would probably make around $12,000 of equity just paying down the mortgage and building equity in the property. $12K in your first year, and that's just paying down the debt on around $25,000 invested when all the costs are accounted for. That is almost a 50% return in year one. But I really hope you can see that everything we spoke about in today's video in terms of what I would do if I was starting over is a link in a larger financial plan and strategy. And if you think of it, not one thing that we spoke about works without the other ones also. It's all part of a larger plan. So while everyone's realities are going to be vastly different, and for that reason, it was really difficult for me to give blanket statements here, you need to apply some critical thinking and apply these, or mold them, I should say, to your own situation and realities, both just your life situation, but also your financial situation. The most important contributing factors to where I'm at right now include that job, first of all, that gave me consistency of income and some credibility towards creditors, along with then consistency of action in everything that I've been doing. It's okay to take breaks, but consistently taking action and moving towards your goals is critical. Speaking of critical thinking and pivoting when necessary has also been really important in the business side of things. Then from there, also continued education outside of formal education. Next up, a will to provide value in everything that I try to do relating to business. And then finally, compounding of pretty much every aspect of my life, including money, my knowledge, and time spent on my businesses. Unfortunately, there's no magic pill, but I challenge everyone watching this right now to focus on what you can do now, today, and live in the present for what you can do right now that will have an impact on your goals that you set out for a year and even further than that down the line. So that wraps it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure to smash the like button. It really helps the channel out, and subscribe to the channel for more investing related content. We're going to be speaking about real estate investing, stock market investing, and everything in between. Also, make sure to check out all the links down below to resources I use and recommend. And on that note, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one.